Was the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the carry on drag.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do you have to say about that, guys?
Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the latest edition of Views on the News. It's going to be a bit different this week because not only is it a hands across the ocean, because I have Dr. Ty Wells here with me all the way from Tennessee. I think it's Tennessee. I keep mistaking it for Kentucky, but it is Tennessee, I think. So how the devil are you, Ty?
Hey, and you know what else? I've been in Kentucky before I was in Tennessee. If you were in Kentucky or Tennessee, if I put you to a random street, you wouldn't tell the difference either. They're basically the same place.
No. Well, there's much of America like that because I've been pretty much all over America. And if you go down a lot of high streets, it's a dual carriageway in our terminology, 2 lanes on each direction. And then there's a Wendy's,
right? And
then there's
a Burger King, a McDonald's, and a CVS, and a Walgreens. It's all the same thing.
Real estate, and so on. And they're all flat roof, single story buildings, and you could be parachuted in and you wouldn't know where you were.
Right. There's the funniest thing is when you drive for 5 hours from anywhere where I'm at, and you get out the car and you're like, why did I leave? It's the same place. You guys, come on. We could have just put this here.
That's right. Well, let me tell you that Europe is not like that. The cities are recognizably different from one another. We've had a long time to do it. Anyway, what I want to do today is a bit different because we're not going to go straight into discussing the news, because you and I had this great rapport. And before we started recording, we were talking about stuff. And we got to the stage of this item, which I didn't fit it into the show 2 weeks ago because we were running over time, but it was homoerotic Jesus. Look at him.
All right. So as someone who is asexual, you're going to have to explain to me why this is erotic.
Well, as someone who is heterosexual,
well, you're closer to the sexual category than I am. What would you want to look like that this person has as a characteristic that would make you more attractive to anybody else?
Let me tell you what the item came up with back 2 weeks ago when I was this was in the news, and it says there's been a backlash from some conservative Catholics in Spain who object to the image of Jesus on a poster used to promote Holy Week in Seville. The image has been described as homoerotic, effeminate, camp, and sexualized. So that was what the Christians were objecting to.
Okay.
Now, there's been lots of religious imagery over the centuries, hasn't there? And
yeah. So I've always liked when I walk into, so I don't know if you've been to these parts of America, but if you go to, like, say, Atlanta, they have depictions of Jesus where it's a black Jesus on a cross. Yeah. And if you ever seen that, it's startling for a lot of people because they're like, what? Jesus is supposed to look Italian. He's supposed to have long, smooth brown hair, just like Italians do. And then they were like, wait a second, isn't he from Mesopotamia, Jerusalem? Do Jerusalem's people look like that? And they look at what people in Jerusalem look like. And they're like, hold on a second. Why does he look Italian?
Well, there you go. It's because nobody knows what he looked like, do they? So, and here's another example of religious imagery. Tell me what you think of this.
I don't know what I'm looking at. Why don't you walk me through it?
It's the strength of the hijab.
Okay.
It's a statue that's been commissioned by a group of Muslims in the Midlands. They're near to Birmingham, that part of Britain. And as you can see, it's the head of a woman, and she's got a scarf on. And it's very crude in terms of angularity, and it's made of rusty steel, and it weighs a ton, and it's about 10 foot high. The guy has to go up a step ladder to reach the top of it. So what do you think of that?
So I have nothing wrong with the construction. I'm sure a lot of people put a lot of work into it. It's more of like where would a statue like that go? Because it seems like it takes up a lot of space. And my only concern would be if it was put into a public space. I think it should be in the purview of the public to have some sort of consent to have a statue like that there. Otherwise, if it's on private property and it's like right next to a mosque and they own the land, go for it. Go for it.
Yeah. We wouldn't want to object to somebody putting whatever they like on their private land.
Exactly.
But they want to put it next to a community hall in a park.
Is it a public park?
Yeah. And we do object to that.
Right.
And we would object equally well to a crucified Jesus in the same place, because we're more than 50% non-believers here. We've had the rise of the nuns, and what I am doing with my other hat on, with my my executive president of AUK, Atheism UK, is I'm commissioning a statue to celebrate the fact that we've now gone through that threshold. We're now a majority of people who don't believe in a God in this country.
So that means 50% of the taxes that are being collected are going to fund parks like that. And if they drop a statue there for one iconography, one dogma, one perspective, then what are we going to do? Flood that park with literally everyone else's?
Yeah.
To be fair? Or should we just say, hey, let's not do any and maintain equitable access to everyone's ideas, but not favoring one over the other?
Well, since non-belief is not it's not a doctrine, is it? It's not. It's not an ideology. There's no scripture. There's no rights, and there's no privileges. There's no values. There's no principles. It doesn't have any of that. So it's just celebrating the state that we're born in,
right?
Not being an innocent baby. So
there's a shame to that, though, because that statue might have been modeled after somebody. And like after the big unveiling, she's like, oh, they made a statue of me. They call it the strength of the job. I bet I look great. And then they take the curtain off. They're like, could use some more polygons. I don't know. Like, what are you trying to say? What are you guys trying to say about me?
No model would be flattered by that, would they?
No, you want to put it up one more time? Just one more time?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, like they got the nostrils pretty strong too. I'm just saying, like, I would have some umbrage if someone made a quality statue like that of me. I was like, that was the best you got? You got Ted to make the statue of me? Can we get somebody else than Ted? I mean, he's using a buzz saw. Can we get like, I don't know, like a chisel sort of situation going on here?
Yeah. Well, there you go. I think it's pretty revolting. But I've come up with the alternative, the idea for a statue to represent, to commemorate, to celebrate the fact that we've gone through this threshold and we're now a majority in this country.
Okay.
And
listen.
Yep. Well, I've also got a sculptor who's willing to do it, and he's really good. He's an internationally renowned sculptor.
Oh, you don't say.
The sculpture, it's a human figure, like a puppet, strings going up to a hand coming out of the cloud, God's hand, right? And a pair of scissors coming along to cut the strings.
Okay, and that's made out of stone? How are you going to make that statue make sense?
Bronze.
Physically. Bronze. I see how you're doing it. Okay.
It's metal. Yeah.
Okay.
If you go to Andrew Sinclair, that's the name of the
I know that name.
The sculptor. If you go there and you'll see the work that he does, it's fabulous.
Okay, cool. Now
he's already done a puppet on strings, so he knows how to do it.
But to play devil's advocate now, you said 51% of the country is nuns. Are you saying that 51% justifies you now to build a statue in a public space to celebrate the lack of a religion? Well, because if that's what's justifying it, would you be okay if you fell back down to 49% and then some new religion became the 51 and then they decide, hey, we're 51 now, we're going to start laying our claims now because you guys did when you had whatever happened to being the bigger non-believer.
Statues always represent their time, don't they? And the location where we would want to put this, I haven't got permission to do that yet, but where we would want to put it is in a London square where the Ethical Society began, and they've got a building, a hall, which is about 100 years old, and there's already in the grounds of in the garden of this London square, there's already a bust of Bertrand Russell.
I see.
So there's a sort of precedent for having statues of a, how should I say, a philosophical nature, rather than a religious nature.
And it doesn't sound like it's going to be imposed onto public with public land. It's more like it's a private building. We're putting it inside.
No, it is. The situation with these London squares is they're sort of semi-private in that they're owned by the council, but they're fenced off. There's a railing around them, although the gates are usually open, not always, but they can lock the gates, but the gates are usually open. So you can walk through the gardens and you can have a coffee at the cafe that's in the grounds, and it's grass and stuff, so it's trees. It's very nice, but it's not a thoroughfare. People don't have to go through it to get anywhere, so it's sort of semi-private, but people who know about it could go there and see Bertrand Russell's bust, for example, and other people of a similar sort. So we're going to have this statue made. It's called Break Free.
So going back to my original thing, because I do want to poke at this a little bit. So the idea is we agree that someone of Islamic persuasion doesn't have a right to erect a statue to celebrate their particular faith in an environment that's open and accessible to the public on public land, because the public pays taxes for that to be there. Is there a different set of rules or a different set of standards for if a secular minded person wants to celebrate secular life and do so in the same area?
Well, obviously we've got to get agreement, but this particular square has a Friends of Red Lion Square committee that looks after the square. They've got some control or advisory over it. And the thing is that we're not inflicting any doctrine on anybody. We're saying you can break free from all these doctrines.
And but, I mean, in the same way an Islam person could say, hey, I'm not telling you to become a Muslim. I'm just saying this lady's representing the strength of the hijab. I'm not saying go to your local mosque. I'm just saying this lady's representing her faith strongly, and I'm not inflicting that on anybody. And you're free to walk around the statue if you like. Where's the criteria where it's bad for one group to do it, but okay for this society to do it? I wonder.
You're aware, of course, aren't you, that in Iran now, if a woman doesn't wear her hijab properly, in other words, if she's got a few strands of hair that are visible, that's an offense, and several women have been killed. The executions.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a big difference between our puppet being made free and a hijab which could be a cause of death if you don't follow the rules.
Is that what the people who are building the strength of the hijab are trying to say, that it was okay to kill people who weren't wearing their hijab? Is that the message? Or are they saying some people can choose to wear their hijab and it's not a problem if they wear a hijab?
I'm sure it wasn't. But what they're doing is supporting this headgear, which in other parts of the world is compulsory, and punishment is swinging if you don't follow that rule. So
it's a weird line, because in North Korea, it's illegal to worship a god. And if you were an atheist, you shouldn't be worshiping other god. In fact, you should be holding Kim Jong-il as the number one guy, right? So like there are places in the world where like atheism in a sense is compulsory. It's just weird to point to an outlier to justify
there's 13 countries in the world which if if they get wind of the fact that you are an atheist, you might be executed.
Right. And there's other ones that will say if you don't worship the God that, like, you know, if you worship any God, that could be a problem too. So like, why are we bringing up outliers for like just the statue? It seems like the case is we don't like it when Muslims build statues in public areas, but we're 51% non-believers now. That gives us a right to build a statue in public. Is that the justification? Rather than like, they're wrong, what's the justification for why you're right? That's what I'd like to know.
We're celebrating the rise of the nuns, the people who don't subscribe to horrible regimes that kill people who do not bow down to them.
Then if you'd be okay, would you be okay if you ever dropped to 49% and Muslims somehow take over 51% of the country? And they're like, we're celebrating the rise of peaceful Islam by building a bunch of nice statues all around the country. And
I don't.
Would you be okay with that?
I don't see that happening. Not in a million years.
But that wasn't the question I was asking, right?
No. But the thing is that all statues are products of their time, aren't they? And we've seen this recently because a lot of statues in the city of Bristol, for example, which were put up to commemorate the wealthy traders who, it's subsequently been revealed, traded in slaves, and their statues have been vandalized, and one of them's been pulled over and so on. But the thing is that statues are a product of their time, and at the moment that we erect this statue, we will be probably 52% growing still. So it's perfectly all right to commemorate that moment in time.
I think you can still do the same thing, but find a better criteria to justify what you're doing rather than we're winning now, so we're going to build the statues now. Because if it was flipped around, you wouldn't like it. But you can find a better argument to still do the same thing. I think that's all I'm asking for, or pushing, because there's always room for continuous improvement for the reasons for why we do things. And you never want to fall into a situation where you're ever the minority again, because cultures go back and forth. And the people who are in charge look back in history and say, well, they did it because they were winning. Now we're winning. Now we have all the justification to do it too. That's the sort of stuff that crumbles people when they're just like trying to pick apart each other because they have a momentary lead until that lead causes them to fall apart. That hubris we see time and time again pulls apart. So I would say, like, in a situation like this, hey, we bought the land, we put the statue on it. This land around the statue belongs to a private group. We purchased the land, now we can do whatever we want with it. That's fine. Or you can say, hey, we have this land as a part of a trust, we can do whatever we want with it. Or this land was special based on some sort of act or first sight for critical thinking, and now it's honored as a blank by the state, by the council. We had that officially approved, mandated by everybody. Everyone signed off on it, and then that led us to move forward. Rather than just be like, hey, we're 51%, we're putting a statue on top of Tesco because we're in charge now, baby. You can't stop us.
Let me see if I've got this right name. I'm just trying to look at something here.
Like, in a similar sense, America has a population that's now majority minority, right? And so should we be looking at, like, say, Mount Rushmore and being like, let's tear this down and put like 3 Mexicans on black guy and a Chinese guy on it now? And say, like, is it just because we're in the lead? Like, is that the mentality that we want to approach things like this in? Or do we want to have a more, I would say, in less of an interest of the populace and more of the interest of the idea itself? Lead.
Right. I've got another picture. I want to show you. I think this is the actual square I've been talking about. Let me see if I can get this picture on the screen. I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to do it because I've been having. Last time I tried to do it earlier.
It's okay.
Today,
it's an Apple product. I don't expect much out of it. It's all good.
It came upside down. So
we'll get them a Windows computer, guys. Don't worry about
it. So what I'm going to do is screen grab it and then upload it.
I would have told them, what is it? Shift Windows S, and he would have been A-okay.
Yeah, no, we don't do that. No. So we've got this guy called William Bradley. I think he started the Ethical Society, or if not the Ethical Society, then a similar society. And it's in this area in London. Actually, I don't think that it's in Market Raisin, somewhere else. But I may be getting the wrong person entirely. Oh dear. This is all taking up too much time now, isn't it? Because
Totally fine. Could I go to a slight
Wait,
tangent while you look at that? I remember there's a television program called A&E, or a channel in America called A&E. It stands for Arts and Entertainment, but we know it more commonly as A&E. A&E does documentaries mostly. You'll see a lot of great documentaries and some weird ones. Some of the memes in the past were the Aliens documentary, where some guy was like, pyramids were made by aliens. That became very famous. But another one that was pretty popular was The Face of Jesus, because you had mentioned no one knows what Jesus looks like. And so they did a documentary on this guy who was able to look at the shrouds that they got from Catholicism, and like the tone of voice and the genealogy that Jesus came from versus like what people used to look like back in the day. And he's like, I'm skilled in this. This is what I got my 4 degrees in. I'm a forensic scientist. I'm the guy that told you what a dinosaur looks like based on its roar. I worked at Jurassic Park. I did everything. I understand this. And here's the face of Jesus. And he unravels it. And he basically takes it off the pedestal and he shows it to the camera. And he puts it on the camera. It's right beside him. And you look at him and you look at the Jesus face. You look at him and you look at Jesus face. I'm like, it's basically the same face. Yeah, basically. It's the same big nose. It's the same weird beard. Like, you basically just made a weird version of your own head and called it Jesus. And all that irony lost on this guy who just completely absorbed in trying to like put his handprint on the history of Jesus and the histrionics that come with that. But it made me realize that a lot of people just want to see themselves in the people that they love. And they want to see themselves in the environment that they live in. And it's sad when they don't see that, because that's the obvious part of religion. People just want to see themselves. So
they always want their God to agree with them. Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
And explains why Roman Catholic Jesus looks like an Italian, why Black Jesus is something that you can only see in like Southern Baptist Church.
Yes.
Why there's a Korean Jesus. And, Hispanic is going through things where, it's cool to not have to force yourself to be masculine every 4 seconds, right?
Yes.
And I think that's good. And so if they have a Jesus that reflects that and people are upset about that, that's just the cultural change of how we see things, which should inform us that a lot of the stuff that we see are only influenced by the culture that we're existing in at that time. Yeah. Right.
So I found the guy I was searching for. He's Charles Bradlaugh, and he was the originator. He started The Freethinker, which is a magazine that's still going today. It's online at the moment, but it's been going, I don't know how many, over 100 years, maybe 150. And I was on a show a couple of weeks ago with the current editor of The Freethinker. So there's somebody who's celebrated who is not religious. And that's all we're trying to do. We're trying to celebrate the rise of the nuns. And we're doing it with this puppet and the scissors and the godly hand. So, but the title of it is Break Free. And what I hope to do, cross your fingers for this, is get Sir Brian May, lead guitarist of Queen, to unveil it and play I Want to Break Free. How about that? Would that be sensational?
Yeah. So the land that statues are typically built on, like the specific plot of land, that would be private land that's owned by the government. I know that sounds weird. Really, what it is restricted land that's in a public space so that they can build stuff on it. At least in America, that's how we do it. I'm not sure how it works in England, but
I have no idea because
you couldn't spray paint that statue, right? It doesn't belong to the public. You couldn't deface it. You couldn't sit on it for lunch.
Yes, those things are violated all the time. And yes, the police do get involved in trying to protect them. And that particular one is in a town center. So it's not government controlled. It might be local government owned, but it's a public space, so it's not impossible to put statues up in public spaces.
Then you have to be open to the fact that Muslims can do it too.
Yeah, but as you said, we can express an opinion.
Other that, or you can give me a more nuanced criteria to work with.
No. They can express an opinion about our statue. We can express an opinion about their statue, and we'll see who wins.
Yeah, the idea of winning and losing on in this format is
that's how democracies work. It's a new numbers game.
Then if you lose in the numbers, you have to be okay with it, because that's how democracy works.
But there's lots of other places where we could put it up anyway.
Yep.
Lots of private land where the owner would love to have it, because I've already had 2 sculptors competing to do it.
Yeah. So like the unfortunate thing is you'll never get to a point where you can outfund or outpace ignorance, because you are working on effort, which is learning things, and thinking, which is not easy as being told what to believe, and operating on that balance. And there are millions of people, I'd say like there's hundreds of thousands of people, at least there's a lot of people born every day. None of those people have the intellect to be able to choose what the right way of learning is from the beginning. And a lot of people are born in circles where they can't make those decisions for themselves. So in the grand scheme of numbers, it's a bad long-term bet. You have to have better criteria.
You're talking about the deficiency of education here.
Yeah.
Because what we in large parts of Western Europe, the education system is very good, and it doesn't teach people what to think. It teaches them how to think.
Right.
And they take their critical thinking abilities and their free thinking abilities, and they apply them, and they make their own judgment. And if education of the population is good enough, then the judgments will be better.
Right. I just think like from the grand scheme, an argument from ad populum, or an argument where we're right because more people agree with us, has rarely led to a long-term good solution.
Yeah, that would be called vox populis fallacy.
Okay, yeah. And so I get that there's more and there's a rise. I just wish it was a different criteria. Like you can still be right, but the argument is the one that's sending me off red flags. I'm sure there's a good argument somewhere for you to explain why you can build that statue there, but just because there's more of us now than those people, therefore we're right to build it here, leads me to a concern.
Well, historically, of course, statues were put up to commemorate men who got rich by trading slaves. So there's
it's going to make it right for them either.
But there is a precedent.
Even with that precedent, it doesn't make it right. So like it's like getting a really nice package for Christmas and wrapping it in wrapping paper that has little pictures of poop on it, and you're like, why is there pictures of poop on this thing that I did want? Well, it's still the thing you want. It's like, yeah, but it's just weird that you did it that way. The first impression that I have is you could probably find better wrapping paper than this, right? Like I still want the thing that's in there. That statue that you're describing still sounds cool. Can you find a better way to frame it that doesn't lead you to more problems in the future? Or
I'm not going to do that now. I'm not going to do that now. I think we've hammered this to death, this particular issue, and we've done a half an hour of our 40-minute show. So I want to take us to the news and talk about Austin Stone Church in Austin, Texas, which recently dismissed its head worship pastor after discovering that he had engaged in inappropriate and explicit ongoing text messages with an adult male. What's wrong with that? He's an adult male texting another adult male. How can messages be inappropriate or wrong for being explicit? But they sacked him. They said he created a disqualifying situation. They didn't approve of his messages. I don't know how they got to see them. And they said that according to the Apostle Paul's letter to Timothy, church leaders should be faithful in marriage, and church elders who are sinning should be reproved before everyone. So what about that?
Standard fare is from what I've heard.
It's the religious sticking their noses into our genitalia all over again, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's just more power play. What gives them leverage to be able to say that, though, really, when you think about it?
Because they control the hierarchy and they can sack this man who's below them. Yes. Also in Texas, last Sunday, a week ago, Joel Osteen, the celebrity priest, pastor who runs the Houston megachurch, they had a shooting. Active shots were fired, and this was during Sunday, as I said. So about 45,000 people were attending the service. It's the third largest megachurch in the US of A.
Third largest. Man, that's surprising.
Yeah. And so there was an active situation involving shots fired at the church. We don't know much more about it, but we do know that Texas Governor Greg Abbott said, "Our hearts are with those impacted by today's tragic shooting and the entire Lakewood Church community in Houston. Places of worship are sacred."
Did anyone get hurt?
We don't know. Well, that hasn't reached me, that information.
Okay. Well, yeah, I hope no one got hurt. It's always tragic when that happens. It's been something that we can easily dismiss, especially as news in America, right? Shootings that go on. But paths towards long-term solutions will become, how do I put it? Will come with trying to figure out how to like engage people safely. I wonder what the nature of it is, because right now I just know that there was a shooting, but I don't even know the context behind it. So I hope like you can find it. And if it was meaningless or needless harm, I hope we can put those who, put people in danger to justice and quickly.
It's just too easy to get guns in the US of A, I'm afraid.
It's actually really hard to get guns in the US, in my opinion. It's really easy to misuse them when you have them, but getting them is actually kind of an endeavor. It's very easy to misuse a gun that you have. It's very hard to get a gun.
There's more guns than there are people. So it must have been easy at some stage.
It must have been easy at some stage. You can get them as property. If you have a piece of property, right? Like if it was donated to you, you have that property. That's an easy way to get a gun, I guess. But it's much easier to misuse. And in fact, suicide for people that own gun is substantially higher than people without. And if you want to talk about any great misuse of a gun, it's self-harm. And that's like one of the main operatings. So like when I say it's easy to misuse a gun, these are the statistics I'm referring to. But as far as like getting gun ownership, the drawback, just some open doors, it's a nuanced subject. But the idea is like, if you are a law-abiding gun owner, of which there are, say you live in a place where you respect the gun laws, you respect your amendment right to hold a gun, you believe in that power, and you train your family responsibly to have it, the fact that every misuse of it that occurs in the news by people that do misuse their guns, whether they get them lawfully or not, lead to laws that impact your ability to use your rights. That's unfortunate too. And so
the thing is that the purpose of a gun is a piece of technology that's very useful for killing people,
as well as animals.
We don't find any need for it in this country. It's almost impossible to have a gun here.
If you lived in Montana and you like had to like take your garbage out and there's like bobcats out there, you're not gonna we would have a different conversation about it, about like why guns are sometimes necessary. But there are some people that absolutely need. There are some people that absolutely need guns. I just want everybody to use them responsibly. I think that's not out of the question to ask for. And I think
those are different sorts of guns, aren't they? Those are vermin guns, and they're 12-bore shotguns, and they're not ones you can put in your pocket, which are specifically useful for killing humans. So we have farmers have guns here for the same purpose. They kill rats and things. Good. So for the second year in a row, I don't know whether you watched the Super Bowl, but
I did not watch the Super Bowl.
Very wise. It's a very boring game. The adverts, the whole idea of a Super Bowl is to stop every few minutes so that you can blast adverts at the audience.
That's why I don't watch it.
Yeah. And one of the adverts featured the Christian Savior.
It did last year, right?
Yes. Second year in a row. That's right. And this one said they spent $1 billion on this advert.
No way.
And this one said, "Come near to God, and He will come near to you."
Okay, I'll say the same thing I said last year. It's good that they spent that money because now it doesn't belong to them anymore.
Yes. So that was
the worst case scenario you want is some religion sitting on $1 billion worth of stuff that could have been either trickled into the economy, had taxes paid for, helped to cover up some pothole on the road, and instead they just sit on it because it makes them feel good. If they had that much money and they're willing to spend it on something as trivial as an ad, who cares? Let them spend it. Now that money's circulated back into the system again. Maybe now we can afford better jobs and better roads.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get people more training to use guns properly, you know?
Absolutely. So coming over to London, we've got a school here. It's a very good state school that is run by the strictest head teacher. And if you look back at the archive, you'll see that I've done some articles about her. And she's had a bit of a contention issue with Muslims in her school. Because it's in London, which is, multi-ethnic. And she's got, 30% Muslims in her school. And one of them said, "We want a prayer room." And she said, "Well, I can't provide you a prayer room because the school has got very restricted accommodation. We're in the middle of a big city. There's no opportunity to expand, but you can pray in the playground." Okay. So that worked okay for a while. One or two more Muslims started to join in. And this is in a school which specifically bans religion. She wants everybody, because she's got so many different faiths there, she wants everybody to respect everybody.
Yeah.
And she sees that religion is one of the tribal differences that she won't allow in. So nobody's allowed to be racist or religionist, or to bully on any grounds whatsoever. She's got a wonderful school. You'd love your kids to go there. But this Muslim child gradually got more people worshipping in the playground. And then some of the teachers were being victimized. Even at their homes, they had weapons thrown at them, stones and bricks and things. And so she has now banned prayer entirely. You can't even do it in the playground. And this has improved. This has improved the behavior in the school. And the teachers feel safer now that they haven't got this unpleasant worship going on. But she's been taken to court on a grounds of, freedom to worship any religion. And
how does it work in England? Is there a right there, or is something being stepped on? How does it work in England? Or
we don't have a written constitution, as you know, but we do have a constitution that's built up over the years by custom and practice. So although it's not written as one document, we do have a body of writing. And it says that you should have freedom to worship, but you don't. It doesn't give you freedom to worship everywhere. You know? So she's within her rights. The government says that a head teacher can specify how she wants to run her school. It's a bit like a dictatorship, but a benevolent one. And so we're going to wait and see what happens in the High Court.
Okay.
Because if she gets her way, this could ripple out to all the other schools in the country. They could use that as justification to drop worship in their schools. And we could end up with a situation like France, where it's actually illegal to preach in a school.
It's illegal to preach in a school. Is preach and prayer treated the same thing? Is it treated the same way? Is like preach, which is just the expression, versus prayer, which is like a religious act. Is it treated the same way? Because like in US for like universities, we have like free speech zones where pastors are allowed to come and do prayer, but they can only do it in a very specific place to do it at. Like it's a free speech area.
In France, they can't do that in a school.
They can't do it even if they have like a free speech area. It's illegal to do it anywhere on that campus.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. That's very interesting. I didn't even know that was a thing. Okay, cool.
We want to be like that.
Huh. That's interesting.
Because before we started recording, we were talking about how the religious want to get our children. And so we don't want the religious to be in our schools. We're coming up. In fact, we've overrun my target time for this show. So what I'm going to do is just play you a little clip to get your reaction. Take a look at this. Tell me what you think.
Okay.
دنيا يا الله خش مخويس حركة مكان يا الله ده ما بكيو وعملياتي كويبة يا الله دودكم براجل وننزل من القرآن ما والشفاء ورحمة للمؤمنين ولا يزيد الظالمين إلا خسارا بإذن إخواني أي دمار كجيلاي بكيوا لا هرزي شيء بإذن إخواني بإذن ما يعلمني نيا كبابي دهولي الكنازوا أم هزني مخوايا قالوا لي لكم سأك وقالوا لي شناكم حياة مبيننا أو بيصد كسري يا الله أخواني بنا.
Why is that not abuse?
Why is that not abuse? That's man. I think the abuse started way earlier, if you were to ask me. But it reminded me a lot of chiropractic. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this concept, but it's the idea that for any prevailing ailment that you have, if I hold you, smack you, cause bones in your brains to or body to snap or break, and then say you're healed, and you feel good in that short-term framework because someone was distracting you by bodily contacting you and screaming at you, maybe even singing and sticking their fingers in your mouth, and you leave and you think, oh, all my ailments are solved. Now I can go back to having bad body posture and not wearing my seatbelt. Like, it doesn't solve any of the problems. And I wonder, I don't know anything about that ceremony that I just saw, but it had the same hallmarks of someone who is relying on a lot of pseudoscience to convey some sort of bodily point.
I'm not sure I agree with that, because she didn't look as though she was a willing participant to me.
I've seen more unpleasant weddings.
Okay, thanks, Ty. Thanks very much. You've been wonderful.
Not a problem.
I'm going to play the outro now. Say
Okay.
goodbye. Cheers.
See you. Thank you, everybody.
Bye bye.
Was the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the carry on drag.
Yeah, that's a good question.
So what do you have to say about that guy?